Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive with us. Today we are diving deep into all these sources about Khaled al-Hakim.
Ooh, Al-Hakim.
Yeah, have you heard of him?
Yeah, the name rings a bell.
It really seems like one of those names that pops up.
Right.
If you're interested in like global affairs or, leadership or even personal development,
Yeah, I can see that.
he's someone you've probably at least seen the name before.
Uh-huh.
And you provided some really awesome sources for this deep dive, I have to say.
Oh, good.
And right away, what caught my eye was just how much variety there is in his experience.
Really?
Yeah, we're talking about national security, human rights,
Wow.
insurance, healthcare. This guy's resume is like, whoa.
That's impressive. Yeah, you don't often see that kind of breadth of experience.
No, it makes you wonder how it all fits together.
Right. How do you get from insurance to national security?
Yeah, let's unpack that a little.
Oh, okay.
So, who is Khaled al-Hakim? Right now, he seems to be wearing a few different hats. He's an advisor to the National Security Committee at this organization called IGO,
IGO.
which apparently is connected to Ignita Veritas University.
Oh, interesting.
And then on top of that, he's a human rights and media consultant for the Human Rights and Citizenship Party
Okay, so he's keeping busy.
and a contract manager at Mr. Healthcare.
Wow.
So yeah, he definitely likes to stay busy.
He does.
And before all this, he was working in insurance at Delta Life Insurance.
Okay.
His academic background is in business administration, but then he's also gone and gotten all these certifications along the way.
Oh, wow.
Agile project management, circular entrepreneurship, systems thinking and health systems,
I'm sensing a theme here.
perfect productivity, stress management.
Sounds like he's got it all figured out.
Right. It's almost like he's trying to create like a master class in a diverse skill set.
Well, it certainly suggests a commitment to lifelong learning and a willingness to embrace new ideas and approaches, and that kind of intellectual curiosity can be really valuable when you're dealing with these complex global issues,
Totally. So we've got a multi-talented guy here.
For sure.
But what I found really fascinating is, reading through all this material was his vision for a sustainable future.
Okay, yeah,
And he breaks it down into these three interconnected pillars.
okay.
The first one being national security.
All right, so how does he see that?
And this is where I think he gets really interesting because
Huh?
he doesn't see national security as just like military strength.
Okay,
He's talking about these threats of the 21st century, like cyber terrorism, environmental disasters,
right.
pandemics, things that traditional armies are not really equipped to handle.
No, absolutely not.
So he's arguing that we need more creative solutions,
Yeah,
like using AI and data analysis to come up with new ways to protect ourselves.
okay, that makes sense.
And he's really passionate about international collaboration, saying that no single nation can face these threats alone.
So it's a global issue requiring global solutions.
Yeah, makes you rethink how our idea of security needs to evolve.
It does. It's a much more holistic approach to national security than we're used to.
Totally. So then we go on to his second pillar, which is human rights,
Human rights. Okay.
which makes sense given that that's his role, as a human rights and media advisor.
Right.
But what I thought was really powerful is that he says that human rights aren't a luxury.
Oh, interesting.
They're the bedrock of a strong and stable society.
So he's saying it's not just the right thing to do morally, it's actually crucial for practical reasons too.
It's the smart thing to do, yeah.
Huh, I like that.
So when people feel safe and respected and empowered,
Uh-huh.
they're more likely to actually contribute to their communities, to the economy.
Right. They're more invested in the well-being of the whole.
Exactly. And he emphasizes things like social justice, freedom of expression,
Mhm.
empowering marginalized groups. He even sees technology potentially playing a role here,
Oh, how so?
increasing transparency, maybe making it harder to hide human rights violations.
That's a really interesting idea, the use of technology for good like that.
Makes you wonder how that would work in practice.
It does. It'd be fascinating to see some real-world examples of that.
Yeah, and he's really focused on these people-centered policies, especially in things like education, healthcare,
Okay.
ensuring a decent standard of living for everyone.
So he's really emphasizing that basic needs have to be met for a society to truly thrive.
Exactly. It's not just about, protecting people from harm. It's also about creating an environment where they can actually flourish.
Yeah, I can see how all of that ties into a vision of a more just and equitable world.
And then that brings us to his third pillar, which is healthcare.
Healthcare, all right.
Which, again, aligns with his role at Mr. Healthcare, where he's focusing on managing those medical networks.
Right.
And here he makes a pretty bold statement.
What?
He believes healthcare is a fundamental human right.
Oh, wow, that's a big statement.
It is, right?
Yeah.
Think about how many healthcare systems around the world are built on the idea that it's something you pay for, not something you're entitled to.
Yeah, it really challenges the status quo, doesn't it?
Totally. And he seems to be advocating for this more equitable system where everyone has access to quality care, regardless of their background.
That's a powerful vision.
It is. And again, he sees this crucial role for technology.
Oh, okay. So how does he see that playing out in healthcare?
He's really enthusiastic about the potential of AI to improve outcomes, not just by developing new treatments, but making the whole system more efficient.
I can see that. Yeah.
Like he talks about using data analysis to predict epidemics,
Wow.
optimize hospital operations, personalize treatments.
So it's not just about the treatment itself, but the whole system around it.
It's like he's trying to revolutionize healthcare from the inside out.
That's ambitious.
And he even connects it back to his vision for national security, saying that a healthy population is essential for a nation's overall strength.
So he's really weaving all these ideas together, showing how they're interconnected.
And that's what I find so interesting about El-Hakim.
Yeah.
He's not looking at these issues in isolation.
He's seeing the bigger picture.
He's weaving them together. He's showing how national security, human rights, and healthcare are all interconnected.
It's a really holistic approach, isn't it? It's like he's creating a roadmap for a more sustainable and equitable future.
It is, and he acknowledges that it's not going to be easy.
Right.
Achieving this vision, he says it's going to require innovation, collaboration.
Yeah, a willingness to challenge the way things have always been done.
But it's a powerful vision, and it definitely got me thinking.
Me too. And it makes me wonder, how does he see the role of institutions like the UN in all of this?
That's a good question. Because he does seem to believe that international cooperation is absolutely crucial for tackling these global challenges.
It makes sense, right? No one country can solve these problems alone.
Exactly. We need to work together, share knowledge, coordinate our efforts.
And that's where his work with organizations like IGO and the Human Rights and Citizenship Party becomes even more interesting.
I think so too, yeah.
It's like we're starting to see how all these different pieces of his experience fit together, how they all contribute to this broader vision he has.
Right. It's like he's building this multifaceted approach to creating positive change.
And using his diverse skills to tackle these challenges from multiple angles.
It's really impressive.
It is.
But it's not the only perspective we need to consider.
Right.
Because in these sources, there's also some interesting insights into his views on insurance.
Oh, yeah, I'm curious about that.
And then there's this counterpoint from a group called, and I'm going to try and say this correctly, Ignita Veritas University in Egypt and Africa, the Middle East.
Okay, mouthful.
They go by IVU.IGO.
IVU.IGO. Got it.
And they seem to have a very different take on at least one of these issues.
Oh, interesting. So we've got some contrasting perspectives to explore as well.
Yeah, let's delve into those next.
I'm intrigued. So before we get to that counterpoint, I'm curious about this insurance angle.
Yeah.
You mentioned he had experience in that field, which seems kind of, out there compared to everything else we've been talking about.
It did seem a bit random at first, right?
Yeah.
But from what I'm seeing in these sources, El-Hakim sees insurance as being, really important for financial and economic stability, especially in the world today.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense when you think about the kind of global challenges that he's so focused on.
Right.
Like pandemics, climate change, cyber attacks, those can have huge economic consequences.
Exactly. He actually even mentions the COVID-19 pandemic.
Oh, right.
Specifically as an example of how traditional insurance models might not be enough anymore for dealing with these really big disruptions.
Oh, interesting.
So he's kind of pushing for this more proactive approach, using data and tech to develop insurance products that can actually anticipate and mitigate future risks.
I see. So it's not just about reacting after something happens. It's about trying to prevent it in the first place.
Right, exactly.
It's like he's trying to bring the insurance industry into this new world.
Yes.
Where the risks are so much more complex and unpredictable.
Cool.
And it sounds like he's also applying that kind of thinking to the insurance sector itself.
Yeah, he sees huge potential for technology to, totally transform insurance. Not just in terms of developing new products, but also, customer service.
Right.
Making better decisions. He talks about data analytics.
Yeah.
To better understand risk, personalize policies, even streamline that whole claims process.
Makes sense, using data to make everything smoother and more efficient.
And it all ties back to this idea of a sustainable future, right? Like a stable financial system supported by like really innovative and adaptive insurance mechanisms.
Right. It's all connected.
Can help societies be more resilient and weather those unexpected storms.
Yeah, it's like building a safety net for the whole world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so you see how like his experience in insurance actually feeds into this bigger picture thinking.
I do. It's not as random as it seemed at first.
Right. It's all part of this like interconnected web of ideas he's weaving.
And speaking of interconnected webs, let's shift gears a bit
Right.
and look at that counterpoint you mentioned.
Yeah.
From the Ignita Veritas University in Egypt and Africa and the Middle East.
IVU.IG.
IVU.IBGO, right? Because this relates to Al-Hakim's current role advising the National Security Committee at IGO, which is linked to this university.
Okay.
And this is where we start to see some of the, like, real-world tensions that come up when you're dealing with global issues. Because while Al-Hakim seems to be all about this international collaboration, finding common ground, IVU, IGO takes a much stronger stance on a particular geopolitical issue.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Turkish involvement in Libya.
Okay.
They see Turkey's actions there as a clear violation of international law and the principle of national sovereignty.
So they're not messing around.
No, they're not. They're calling for action from the UN Security Council.
Wow.
Specifically invoking Chapter 7 of the UN Charter.
Okay, remind me, what's Chapter 7 again?
Well, it essentially allows the Security Council to take measures to, like, maintain or restore international peace and security.
Okay.
Which includes things like economic sanctions,
Wow.
diplomatic efforts, even the use of military force as a last resort.
So they're really escalating things.
They are. They see Turkey's intervention in Libya as a serious threat to regional stability.
Wow.
And they're basically urging the international community to step in.
That seems like a pretty strong contrast to Al-Hakim's emphasis on collaboration.
It does, right. On the one hand, you have Al-Hakim advocating for dialogue and understanding. And on the other hand, you have this organization he's associated with taking a much harder line.
Makes you wonder how he reconciles those two viewpoints.
It does, right? Is he aligned with IVU.IGO's stance on this?
Yeah.
Does he see it as, like, an exception to his general philosophy? Or is there some more nuanced perspective we're missing here?
Yeah, tough to say.
It's tough to say from the sources we have, but it does highlight the challenges of working within these complex systems where you have all these competing interests and different interpretations of, like, what's right and wrong.
So even with all this talk about collaboration, Al-Hakim's still operating within a system where power dynamics and national interests often just, like, overrule everything else.
It's a reality check, isn't it? Building a sustainable future is not just about having good ideas. It's about navigating this messy world of international relations and figuring out how to make progress even when there's disagreement.
It's a lot more complicated than just saying, let's all work together.
Way more complicated.
But amidst all this, like, geopolitical maneuvering, I keep coming back to Al-Hakim's focus on human rights.
Yeah, that was a powerful part of his vision.
You mentioned earlier how he was challenging this idea that economic development or national security should come at the expense of human rights.
Right. He sees them as interconnected, not in opposition.
Can you talk a little more about that?
Absolutely, because Al-Hakim really argues that respecting human rights isn't just a moral thing, it's essential for creating a truly successful nation.
So it's not just about being, like, nice or doing the right thing. There's a practical benefit, too.
Exactly. Think about it. When people feel safe and secure, when they have freedom to express themselves, when they have access to education and healthcare, they're more likely to be productive members of society. They're more likely to contribute to their communities, to the economy.
So you're actually creating the conditions for greater economic growth, social stability.
Precisely. Al-Hakim is making the case that respecting human rights is a smart investment in a nation's future.
Oh, interesting.
He points to examples of countries where a strong commitment to human rights has led to greater prosperity and stability, while those that suppress human rights often face social unrest, economic stagnation, even violence.
So it's not just a theory. There's real-world evidence to back it up.
Exactly, and it makes you wonder why more leaders don't see it this way.
It does. Why is there still this idea that you have to choose between economic development and human rights?
It's a complex issue.
Yeah.
Often rooted in, like, historical paradigms, political ideologies,
Right.
economic interests. Sometimes leaders might genuinely believe they're acting in the best interests of their nation, even if their actions violate human rights.
It's all about perspective, I guess.
It is, and that's where Al-Hakim emphasizes education and transparency.
Right.
He believes that by promoting critical thinking, fostering open dialogue, holding leaders accountable, we can create a more informed and engaged citizenry.
Who will demand respect for human rights?
Exactly. So he's putting a lot of faith in the power of education to change things.
It makes me think about his work with IGO and Ignita Veritas University.
Right, which seems to be all about promoting truth and knowledge.
Exactly. Do we know much about these organizations?
Well, from what we can gather, Ignita Veritas University, IVU, yeah, seems to be this research and education institution with a strong focus on critical thinking, ethical leadership,
Makes sense.
finding solutions to global challenges.
It aligns with his overall vision. Right?
It does. But IG itself is a bit more mysterious.
Yeah, we don't have much information on that.
The sources just mention that it's connected to IVU.
Right.
And that Al-Hakim advises their National Security Committee.
But what that actually entails is unclear.
It's a bit of a black box.
It is intriguing. Like, what kind of national security issues are they focused on? What kind of advice is he giving? And how does all this connect to his broader vision?
Yeah, lots of questions.
So many questions. Maybe it's top secret government work.
Could be. Or maybe some groundbreaking research they're not ready to reveal yet.
It adds to the mystery.
It does. But while we don't have all the details about Iju, we can still learn a lot from his public statements and his overall vision.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to examine. His views on healthcare, and specifically the role of technology in that field.
Oh, yeah. He was really excited about that.
He was. Let's delve into that next.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, he seems to be particularly passionate about the potential of AI in healthcare.
Yeah, and it's a great example of how his different areas of expertise, like data analysis and systems thinking, actually come together.
Right. He sees the potential for AI to revolutionize healthcare, from predicting epidemics to improving hospital efficiency, even personalizing treatments.
It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
It is, but I also wonder about the potential downsides,
Yep, for sure.
Like, what about the ethical implications? Could there be biases built into these algorithms? And what about the role of doctors and nurses?
That's a really good point. Are we going to end up with robots making all the healthcare decisions?
Right. It's important to think about those kinds of questions before we go too far down this road.
Totally. So it's not just about the technology itself,
No.
but how we use it,
Yeah.
and what kind of safeguards we put in place.
We need to make sure these systems are fair and transparent and accountable.
And that they're actually benefiting patients, not just making things easier for insurance companies or hospitals.
Right. It's a complex issue.
It is, and it brings us back to Al-Hakim's core message, right?
What's that?
The need for this holistic, interconnected approach.
Yeah, it's not enough to just focus on one issue in isolation.
Right. We need to think about all these different systems and how they interact.
And how solutions in one area might have unintended consequences in another.
It's all connected.
It is, and I think that's a really valuable takeaway from our deep dive today.
I agree. It's been like a whirlwind of information.
It has.
But we've learned so much about Al-Hakim's vision.
And about the complexities of building a better future.
Exactly. And it's given us a lot to think about.
It has, for sure.
So as we wrap up, I'm curious, what stood out to you most from all of this?
That's a good question. I think for me, it's the reminder that even in the face of these huge global challenges, individuals can still make a difference.
Yeah. It's like he's saying, don't get overwhelmed, get involved.
Exactly. Whether it's through your work, your activism, or just being an informed and engaged citizen.
Yeah, we all have a responsibility to contribute to building the kind of world we want to see.
And I think Al-Hakim is a great example of someone who's doing just that.
I agree. He's definitely an inspiring figure.
He is. And his story is a reminder that we can all make a difference.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of Khaled Al-Hakim.
It's been a pleasure.
We've covered a lot of ground, but I have a feeling you'll be thinking about some of these ideas long after this deep dive is over.
I think so too.
If you were in a position to advise Al-Hakim, knowing everything we've discussed today, what would you suggest he focus on? And why? That's something to ponder as we wrap up our exploration of Khaled Al-Hakim's vision for a sustainable future.
Thanks for listening.